On this episode of Lineage, the team uncovers a mysterious, unknown family member.
Looking back, it seems really strange not to have ever met him or to have no recollection of ever having met him.
The researchers need all of their wits about them as they come up against some serious obstacles.
This case is certainly full of mysteries.
And the team at Fraser and Fraser are astonished to find one of the largest family trees they have ever seen. Dan kept on locating new family members and it was never ending.
Plus, we need your help in finding out who is entitled to £63,000.
My role involves finding family, which sometimes brings up more questions. My name's Ben, I'm a case manager at Fraser and Fraser. The role of a case manager is the point of contact for referring individuals. So I initially start the case, I instruct one of our researchers to undertake research, and I speak to beneficiaries and take the case from the start to the end. So the case of Colin Blackburn was a case placed in the public domain, and it appeared the case may be referred to the government legal department, and it looked like he had died intestate without leaving a will. There was no near kin, so we had to trace the family. We were given a full name, date of birth, a place of death, and a date of death.
The case of Colin Blackburn is definitely an unusual one from what I've done before. My name's Dan and I'm the research case manager for Fraser and Fraser. My role in this case was lead researcher, so when we found out about the case, I was the one that looked into it straight away and started doing the research. Okay, using the information we were given at the start of this case, such as the date of birth and date of death, we were able to ascertain where the deceased lived. The deceased was living in Crosby. Crosby's just north of Liverpool. And we found out that he was actually living in a property owned by two people, and we didn't know who those people were at the time. So we just had to look into it and just ascertain who owned the property. When we looked at the land registry for this property, we found that it was owned by John Martin and Ellen Martin. Now, on the whole, it didn't look like that they were related to Colin. There was no relationship in terms of name or anything like that. But we did look into the marriage of John and Ellen, and we found out that John married an Ellen Blackburn. Now, that was a connection that we needed to connect the deceased to the person that owned the property. We knew that the Blackburn was a surname that we had to look into. Our working theory was that Ellen was Colin's mother, but at this time we were yet to find a birth certificate for Colin. So on a marriage index for Ellen to John Martin, we found that Ellen married as the surname Blackburn and also under the surname of Riding. Now, we ascertained from this point that Ellen's maiden name was probably Riding, so we then looked for a marriage between the who we assume were the parents of the deceased, between an Ellen Riding and a Mr. Blackburn. We then found a marriage in 1932 for a Ellen Riding to a Robert Blackburn, so this is who we assumed were the parents of the deceased. So we've been able to find birth records for both the parents of the deceased, but at this time we were unable to find a birth record for Colin.
We were trying to locate a birth record for Colin. We knew when he was born. We knew that he'd stayed in the area, but there was just absolutely no records there. We also then decided to look in different indexes. So we were looking into Scotland, we looked into Ireland, there were no records there. So we thought possibly that he was adopted. So if we can't locate a birth record and we locate an adoption for the individual, that's the information that you go on is based on what's in the adoption. That will give the details of the adopted parents and where the adoption took place. And therefore he would cease to have any sort of relationship to his blood relations. Legally, you're now looking for the adopted parents' family.
Adoptions were fairly common at this time. This is due to the rise in illegitimate births at that period, during the war period, and also because government legislation had come in to make it easier for families to adopt children during the wartime period. To find an adoption record, you have to go to the British Library, which can be a nice day out. When we obtained Colin's adoption record, it showed that he had been adopted by Robert Blackburn and Ellen Blackburn, who were his parents.
So after further research, we discovered that Colin's parents had married 11 years prior to adopting him. They subsequently divorced, and then she went on to remarry again.
Our next step at this moment was to establish heirs for Colin's estate. Now, we looked into near kin of the deceased, which would have been whether he was married or had any children or whether he had any siblings. We were able to ascertain quite quickly that he was unmarried. There were no marriage records either in area or even outside of the area that he lived in. And also we were able to find any siblings that would have matched up from the parents' marriage record. As we've established that Colin had no near kin, our next step is to look at the wider family, the grandparents of the deceased, and then on to aunts and uncles. So we can look at a lot of the records, and some maybe could be mistranscribed, or we may miss something for some reason, but that can all be picked up when speaking to family members on a case. So speaking to them is probably one of the most important things that we need to do when putting a family tree together.
The strange thing about this case is that when I contacted the Blackburn family, none of them had any knowledge of Colin. They always thought that their uncle, Colin's father, was a bachelor. He lived with his grandmother, and they were never aware that he married or adopted a child.
This was also the case when we spoke to the maternal side.
Yeah, it's just really odd that I didn't really know anything about him until we were contacted by Fraser and Fraser to, let us know that I was one of the beneficiaries. So I'm Paula, married name Paula Kane, and I am a first cousin once removed from Colin. We used to visit Auntie Dolly, Colin's mum, and her sister, Auntie Hetty. So we periodically did go and visit them. But again, there was never any sign of Colin, never any discussions about Colin. I mean, obviously as a child, I'm sure lots of discussions were had, but it wouldn't necessarily have included me.
So when the family checked their archives and their photographs, they found a photograph that was in their grandmother's collection. And on the back of the photograph, it was noted in their hand that it said Robert and Colin. So that was the first time they realised that Robert actually had a son, and it was a light bulb moment for them.
So this is Auntie Dolly, with who I now know was her son Colin. It looks like they were at a wedding. It'd be lovely to know whose wedding that might have been, but nothing to suggest whose wedding that was. Colin, as a young boy, again, looks like he was around 10, 11 years old there. Handsome boy. I don't know whether that is Colin as a baby. I'm speculating really by suggesting it might be. Well, there you go, it's on the back. So Colin, aged 9 months. We would love to know more about him. We would have loved to know about his life, what he did, what his job was, whether he was happy, whether he had close relationships, who his friends were, just what his life was like, day to day. We don't have anything to go on, other than some photographs, most of which don't really mean anything to us.
So far we've identified approximately 130 heirs entitled to benefit from his estate. We realised pretty early on that as there were no near kin, and we're starting to look into the aunts and uncles of the deceased from the paternal lines, it was going to be an absolutely huge tree, and that's simply because the maternal side, there are multiple aunts and uncles, and they've all had lots of children, so many descendants to trace. I mean, we have heirs in New Zealand, Ireland, the UK, Canada, everywhere. This would probably be one of the largest trees I've worked on.
So it was really surprising to find out that we were part of such a big family tree and there were so many people involved.
Colin's estate's worth approximately £250,000, which is the property and other assets that he had. The whole process of probate can take a long time, and we've still yet to distribute the estate. So we realised that Colin's mother's estate hadn't been probated because we'd searched for a grant. There was no grant listed. And we did a will search, there was no will, so at that point we had to take out a grant in order to deal with the property sale and transfer it over to Colin's name. So her estate forms part of his estate. So the case of Colin Blackburn is a really unusual case in the fact that we've had to take out 2 grants, We've had multiple heirs around the world, and the fact that no one knew Colin. None of the family who were relatively close to his parents knew anything about him. Just very mysterious.
Very strange. You know, why didn't he accompany Auntie Dolly and Uncle John? Why wasn't he there in the house? If he lived in the house, why wasn't he there when we went to visit them? Maybe he was away maybe he was away working, you know, but it is all speculation. I have no idea. And that's the frustrating part. And I think with any mystery, you do like to at least have a chance to get to the bottom of it. But I just don't see that there is one here, really.
Cases like this can throw up lots of emotions. Telling families they had relatives they didn't know about just up the road can be bittersweet. Unfortunately, there are still so many things we'll probably never know about Colin. I'm glad that we've been able to tell the family about him so his legacy can be celebrated.
Now stay with us as we give you the details on how someone could be entitled to £63,000.
£63,000. That's how much money remains unclaimed from one estate. I'm Neil Fraser, partner here at Fraser and Fraser, and we give money to people from family they may never have known about. This is a story of Russell Mackenzie Keel, who died in Lincolnshire in 2012. He was born in 1944 and his mother was Rita Keel. And that's where the trail ends. No will, no known next of kin. Unless we can find a connection, this money's going into the government. If you have any information, please contact us on 020 7832 1400 or visit the webpage fraserandfraser.co.uk. Could you be that missing link? Help us finish a story. It may change yours.